Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today, because let's face it, it is Ryzen frenzy at the moment. It's coming thick and fast, and to be honest with you, I can't get the reviews done quick enough. We're going to do two motherboards in one, just so, because they, to be fair, they are so similar, as you'll see when we talk about stuff later on. But essentially, it's another MSI Tomahawk, but in a pretty white dress. Ooh. Anyway, so we have an ATX version, we have an M-ATX version. They're both down the affordable end of the market compared to some of the MSI motherboards. The M-ATX is below 90 and the ATX is below 110. So very, very kind of aggressive in the pricing there. But sometimes when we talk about pricing, sometimes that means they might have had to, you know, scrimp back on stuff and it might not be as good. So we'll have a good look round and then we'll see if the performance numbers stack up. So 2 boards, 2 boxes, but what actually comes in the box is pretty much exactly the same on both. And in the nicest possible way, that is not a lot. You get your driver's CD, you get a manual, a couple of SATA cables, and the back plate. That is it. But that might not necessarily have to be a bad thing for everyone, because let's face it, you don't really need a great deal of stuff going on in the box itself, do you? Because we're more interested in the actual motherboard itself, and sometimes when they pad the box out with so much stuff, it just pads out the price as well. So let's have a good look around the board. In fact, no, we'll start with this one. Yeah, we'll start with this one. So there's lots of white, and when we do look at it though, it's not just plain white. We can see these grey kind of markings over the board, and it's almost like the reverse of the crate, which is a bit weird because the crate used to be the white board. Joys for couriers coming to bring me more toys. Anyways, apologies for the interruption. Anyway, as I was saying, the crate used to be the white board, and now there's more black to it than anything else. But this one, there obviously is a lot of white, but I can show you on here, but there's more of it around the back. Now, the best way I can explain the white on this is it's kind of a polar white. There's a lot of blue in it, and if you're a bit of a colour freak, you'll understand what I'm saying, but the white does have a blue tinge to it. It's not kind of like a snowy kind of white. Yeah, I'm not going to go any further. Anyway, that does kind of tie in with the fact that we do have a little bit of blue on the heatsink marking here, and down in between the heatsink on the chipset there is a little bit of blue in there. The reason why I wanted to bring that up though is because if you did fancy a project and you did think to yourself, I don't particularly like this blue, what can I do about it? Well, you can easily get some vinyl strip and put over this if you want in whatever colour, like a pinstriping for a car. But also, because of the way that the board it has been put together, what we can do is remove the 2 screws, and then this comes off. But then what you can do is see what is underneath. Now you can easily get in there and either remove it if you just want the grey, or you could put another colour in there if you wanted, like a red, or well, anything, do you know what I mean? So if you wanted to come up with your own custom theme, then that would be totally possible. Moving around the board though, what we can see is we've got white PCI Express graphics card slot here, and it's got the armour around it as well, whereas these other ones don't. It will do crossfire, but no SLI or anything like that, but that's part of the B350. It's mainly kind of geared up for a single graphics card, which is why you've only really got one of the coloured slots. You do get armour around the DDR4 slots as well over here, and they again are white, nice kind of theme. One of the things that I did notice though is we've got the 2 PCI Express 1s here, which is being fed from the chipset, because these are PCI Express 1 but then times 2 bandwidth. So PCI Express 2 bandwidth but only 1 slot. It's complicated, but anyway, we do get some legacy stuff down the bottom, and I've not seen those for ages. PCI slot, I suppose it's going to be good if you've got a really old sound card or networking card or something that still uses these, but to be honest with you, most of them would have been PCI Express now. So I think this is almost kind of like a filler rather than they're expecting people to use a great deal of them. You do get 4 SATA. You've got 2 horizontal, 2 vertical, PCI Express 3 on the horizontal, which is kind of nice. If we were to talk about fan headers, you do get your CPU fan header here. You get 2 extra ones down the side. There's another one down near the bottom here, one right down the bottom of the board, and then there's another system fan header over here. So there's plenty. M.2 in the middle, pretty much standard kind of board layout. Something I do want to bring to your attention though is we've got the power phases for the CPU over here, and you do have a heatsink for the other power phases at the top. You'll understand why I spoke about this when we move on to the M-ATX board. And then round the back we've got a PS2, VGA. This is an old kind of hook on here. But anyway, DVI, HDMI, 2 USB 2s. You got USB 3.1, 2, all of it. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, we've got A and C, and then you've got 2 normal USB 3s, gigabit Intel Ethernet, and then your digital audio that's here, gold-plated connectors, and you can see that following down the side of the board there is the little strip keeping the PCBs kind of separate, and then you have got the gold Japanese capacitors on it for your audio, so you know, relatively good audio, although there's not a massive amount going on down here if we really think about it. That is give you a nice zoom in. It's going to be easier for me to see as well. There's your audio chip. Oh, too far, Thomas, too far. There we go. Anyway, so audio, it's all right, but at the end of the day, it's not a mega money board. AM4 slot, so pretty much everything Ryzen is going to fit on it. We've got Ryzen 3, which will be coming up soon, which you'll be able to use that, and that's what the audio. Dear Lord, that's what the video outputs are for on the back. But then we do have all of the Ryzen 5s, all of the Ryzen 7s, so you can pretty much go from the APUs right the way up to the 8 cores, all on one board. Nice. So that's the ATX one. It's below £110 at the moment. Then we move on to the M-ATX one. So there's less slots. You've only got 4 slots down the side rather than 7. Smaller board, smaller cases, I would hope, because otherwise that drives my OCD absolutely crackers. Smaller board, and nicely it's got a smaller price, because let's face it, there are some manufacturers out there when they bring a smaller board out they want to charge you more money for it. Makes no sense. Anyway, straight away, first thing to talk about. Do you remember me talking to you about the heatsink? This one doesn't have it. So when I saw that, I was like, naked MOSFETs? That makes it look well cheap. Ooh. So I asked MSI basically what those MOSFETs would be feeding. Now, when we look at the 2 boards and we just pay attention to the side, you can see that you've got 4 chokes down the side. There's your 4 power phases. It's the same on this one. There was 2 chokes at the top. Up here below the heatsink, you've got the MOSFETs, and it's the same on this one as well. So they're relatively the same in the way that they feed the power to the CPU, apart from the M-ATX one doesn't have a heatsink above. Now what the heatsink would have been doing, or is doing, is feeding power to the SoC side of the chipset, SoC side of the CPU. Now this is pretty much, the SoC is the voltage that you play around with and tweak if you want to put your memory up a little bit. So it doesn't get a massive amount of load. But I will talk to you about this because I did pay particular attention to this area when I was doing my testing, and we tested it with an 1800X as well. So we couldn't have put any more power or any more stress on it. Anyway, so weirdly on this board, you do get your white PCI Express with the metal cover, lovely, but they used a white PCI Express for the secondary one as well. Whereas with this one, they only used black to separate them out, which I was a bit disappointed about with that board because I think it looks much nicer all white. You do get your white dims down the side, but they've not got the armour over the top like you got on the other board. You've still got your M.2 here, a couple of PCI Express ones, although to be fair, if you're going to be running a normal dual slot graphics card, if you're thinking about plugging in an adapter for, I don't know, it could be wireless, it could be an external sound card or something through this, to not mess around with all the lanes and stuff, then the fact that it's so close to your graphics card might be something that you want to think about, especially where graphics cards are getting thicker. Also, don't forget, if you plug anything into these, it doesn't mess around with your graphics card lanes, but if you did plug something into this, it does. So, fans. Got the CPU fan header there, then we've got a system fan header down the side there. Nothing more down the actual side of the board at all, but when you come across here, there is one here, and then you've got your normal one up here for like your rear fan, if that's where you like to put them. So you've got a few fan headers there, not a massive amount. Only 4 SATAs again, 2 horizontal, 2 vertical, fairly standard. PCI Express 3. My words are terrible in this video. USB 3 internal, horizontal, nice touch. Then looking else around the board. Anything that I've missed? I don't think so. Anyway, so, oh, you do get 2 USB internals, USB 2 internals down the bottom. And then another USB 3 header there. So yeah, nice amount of stuff spread out and around. Around the back is exactly the same as the other board, including your Japanese capacitors for the audio and the ALC 892 Realtek audio chip down the bottom there. So it is very, very similar, bar that, and all they've really done is squeezed everything into a tighter space. I'm not sure why they didn't just put the heatsink on the top of the M80X one though. Anyways, okay, so moving on to performance. I tested the boards with an 1800X. I know the boards aren't necessarily going to be the price point for an 1800X, but we decided to go with 1800X because it was the first CPU to have arrived when we got them from AMD. And also what we're going to do is we're going to test across all of the boards with the same CPU, so it keeps everything fair. I do understand that if you're going to buy one of these, you're probably going to be buying a Ryzen 5. But by using an 1800X, again, like I said, it means all the boards can go in the same graphs. It makes it fair, and it also does, these cheaper ones, we do end up putting a lot more stress on them as well. So these ones actually end up getting a bit of a harder time on the actual power regs and all that sort of stuff. But that did actually play into our hands for the M80X board as well. So 1800X. Now, the thing that I will say is we've got the Tomahawk Arctic here. It is pretty much the Tomahawk original in a different dress. And when we were running the tests, literally the tests, other than the memory bandwidth, the tests for, because we've had the GEARS update and we had the most recent BIOS from the MSI website dropped onto these. So the tests, I could not believe how close they were. They were literally within a run tolerance. If you've got a benchmark, if you run it once and then you take your result, and then if you run it the second time, sometimes they can be like a few points difference. Well, that was literally what we were getting between the white Tomahawk and the original results that we got on the grey one. If you're wondering why it's not in the lineup, it's because it's already gone back to MSI and is probably with another reviewer by now. But anyway, so they were incredibly close. But then with the M80X one, they were within a whisper of it as well. So what I've done with the graph is, rather than having them all spread out all over the place, we've pretty much just kind of nailed them all in together. So you've got the Tomahawk ones, and that's going to cover all of these. So it was just to make it cleaner, and to be honest with you, when I was making the graphs, I got fed up with putting extra lines in the spreadsheets. But they are so close, so just take it as, you know, within a few points either way. And this is the most important thing, the most interesting thing as well, is the overclocking was pretty consistent in that they overclocked exactly the same. 4 gigahertz on our 1800X with 1.4 volts, 3.2 gigahertz, 3200 megahertz memory. And this is the other thing as well, is MSI have been pushing their AXMP. Now, don't get me wrong, the memory on Ryzen isn't perfect. That's not down to the vendors though, as in MSI and the other big brands. It is a thing to do with AMD, because AMD have to do the memory qualifications. So they go in and they test and set up all the memory stuff, and then they have to give that code that they make, which gets dropped into the BIOS. So if there's any delays with memory kits, or your memory kit isn't working, that's going to be more than likely an AMD issue. Now, one of the things I can say is that a lot of the kits that I've got now are working, which is a huge step forward. But the ones that don't, sometimes you can get away with manually setting them. So if you know how to manually set your memory up in the BIOS, sometimes that can be a way around. And if you can't do that and it's still getting funny, those few of you that are out there, just stick with your, it'll run at 2133 if you just leave it alone. Stick with that, but keep an eye or get your email updates or something from your board manufacturer's website, and then when the new BIOS comes out, jump on that and then see if it's fixed your problem. That's the best thing that you can do at the moment. It is just new tech and they're filtering the bugs out. You also kind of need to think about the fact that this is an entirely new platform, so going through hundreds upon hundreds of memory modules and, you know, possible differences in that you can have a, for argument's sake, a Dominator Platinum kit that can need 12, 14 different entries into your BIOS because it might run a different way, or it might run different timings. It may even have a different memory chip on it. And this is just, I know it's kind of tearing off the face of what's going underneath, but there is a lot more to it than, oh, my memory kit doesn't work, it shouldn't take them 5 minutes to fix it. It really can take them a long time to fix it. So bear with them. This is all part of the fun with Ryzen at the moment. You're an AMD fanboy, you've bought it, you know, we'll work together on this rather than giving people grief. Anyway, so performance, and I'm going to start off with the bad one because it hasn't changed since I've done the last Tomahawk, and I was hoping that the BIOS would have sorted it, and it is the fact that PC Mark 8 just doesn't seem to like the MSI stuff at the moment. I don't know why. MSI know about it. It's probably just not on the top of their agenda at the moment, and it might end up getting fixed later on, but it will be a BIOS fix that will sort this out. Then gaming, actually quite strong, which is a really good thing because there has been some of the other boards that have lacked a bit from it. Even at launch, for argument's sake, the Gigabyte that's in the graph, wasn't particularly impressed with the gaming performance, and it's not something that they fixed. But MSI is still really strong in this. And we do a range of the games here because we've kept the gaming kind of, you know, we only do a few because there's not really a great deal of point in doing loads and loads of games. That's more of a CPU orientated thing that you want to pay attention to rather than the difference between motherboards. So if you're interested in Ryzen gaming performance, go and look at one of the CPU reviews on the OC3D website or on YouTube, because we've done 5 and 7. I've done the 1400, the 1500X, the 1600X, the 1700, the 1700X, and the 1800X. There's loads for you to go and look at. They're the ones to pay attention to between the graphs rather than board to board. But we showed you the graph anyway because you all love graphs. Then Cinebench R15. Now this one is the multi-threaded one, and you can see that with an overclock it makes a fairly big difference. Wasn't that great at the bottom. Again, it's probably something to do with BIOS, which they'll eventually get sorted out. When you give it a little bit of a tickle and you give it a little bit of an overclock, it was really strong. Now, the one thing that you need to remember in this graph is these are B350s and the other ones are all X370s. So the other ones are a lot more expensive. I mean, the cheapest one in this graph above this is £165. But then, for argument's sake, the overclock one, which is just above this, is the MSI Titanium, is £300. So the fact it's in 4th place is actually epic, because if we went above, it's 300, 225, 250. So the fact that these are basically less than half the price, much less than half the price of any of the boards in front of it. So, and another thing is, like I said, less than half the price, all been tested on the same CPU. So when we do look at these graphs, when you keep that in mind, I'd not be bothered with it at all. Single threaded performance, this really does filter out the difference between them all. But the Tomahawk does fit in the graphs in a very similar kind of place as it did with the multi-threaded. So I kept the testing down as much as I could do. Like I said, they are incredibly similar. This was pretty much a carbon copy for the grey one, and this one was just a teensy smidge behind at all times, but never by much. Do you know what I mean? It was literally a handful of points in each one, which is why we lumped them all into the graphs together. I'm not sure whether you're going to like that or not, but it just saves me having to put millions of entries in the spreadsheets. Anyway, conclusion, and to kind of wrap it all up. Essentially, when we reviewed the original Tomahawk, I gave it the Gamer's Choice and the Value for Money Award, and I would give both of these, the Gamer's Choice and the Value for Money Awards, again. To be honest with you though, I could kind of mix it up and change them around, because I think that what MSI have done with, especially the ATX one, in that they've taken the other board, which was grey and had red lights, and they've kind of got this now, and we've now got the white version, little bit of blue on it, but that could be easily changed. But they've given you a board where you can have one or the other, and they don't, there's no difference in performance, and there's no difference in price. So you've got two very different looking boards, but for the same price. And genuinely, I've been wanting them to do stuff like this for years. And with the Arctic range as well, MSI did those graphics cards. They're one of the cheaper end of the market, with the little white rings around the fans. Absolute fit in perfect with this. It would be absolutely lovely. So, to be honest with you, I could give them like an innovation, because they've finally got a range where you can have the same board but in different colours, and you don't have to do that with RGB lights. You can just have a big bit of white in there if you want. And also you could go, extreme aesthetics, but we just kept it to Gamer's Choice because they perform really, really well for the money. They perform like much more expensive boards, if I'm fair. And it would be the basis of an epic gaming system. Now, I did say to you I was going to talk to you about the MOSFETs at the top. Now, I know people are going to be like really kind of like worried, oh, bare MOSFETs, or some people might be really worried. They didn't really get that hot. Even with an 1800X and 3.2 gigahertz memory, 3200 megahertz memory, and I absolutely stressed the gonads out of this board when I did it. I actually left it running OCCT overnight, and didn't get hot, didn't get any issues with problems. I was using a thermal probe to go around the board, and it wasn't any particularly that hot at all. We were getting roughly about 8 degrees more from around bits of the board than we were with the one with the heatsink. So not a huge amount really, when you think that most MOSFETs are rated for over 100 degrees anyway. So if it did bother you, you can buy stick-on heatsinks, and they're square little ones, so you could put some stick-on heatsinks over the top if it really worried you. You might have to thermal epoxy them though, because I'm not sure whether when they get warm, because of the crappy glue basically on the heatsinks when they go on. I do wish that MSI had put one on there just for the sake of it, but anyway, if they didn't. The other option that you've got, if you end up with a Ryzen 5 and you're not going to go for a massive overclock, you could get a fan down pointing CPU cooler, which is going to blow air over these, and they're going to be happy as Larry. Not that they're not anyway, but it's just for those of you out there that might be that little bit worried, and it's something that you could do really easily. Also, if you're absolutely nuts and you want hoses all over your board and it just has to be cool, you can actually get little individual kind of these sort of sized chips that help you cool your Raspberry Pi and things like that. So if you wanted to, you could even go full kind of mad scientist spaghetti junction, and you can buy those little chips where you could literally stick those on. They would have to be bonded on, but you could water cool it if you really wanted to. I would think you were insane, which is why I said mad scientist, but it's an option for you. Also, don't forget what I said. If the blue detailing on this board isn't for you, go to Halfords or a car car parts place. We can buy pinstripe to go down the side of the car. That'll fix that. Cover it over with black, red, blue, grey, whatever you wanted to. You could get rid of that really easily. I reckon actually if you were to put some nitromors on that, it'd probably come off anyway. But you can also, if you fancy a little project, pop these off and then put some vinyl in over the blue as well, or even paint these bits white if you wanted to. Anyway, there's a few ideas for you there, the way you can customise it. And talking about customising it, if you've not noticed it already, I'm just going to chuck these boxes down here. Oh, you can go full nuts as well, because this is it's actually one of the boxes that we use in the office quite regularly. So this is just an MSI themed Phenom, which the M80X is probably going to end up in at some point. But we did this for a show about, I don't know, it's maybe 3 years ago or something. It's decals that we had custom made. Before, if you ask where you can buy them from, you can't. It's something that we had custom made. But essentially, if you were to go to a signage company and give them this as an idea, you can do it. It's fairly easy. We use reflective as well. It's weird. We actually used the grey bits around the outside is from motorway signage. Basically, it was a brain fart that I had one night, because when people are at shows and they're using flashes all the time to take pictures, well, if you use a flash on this, it goes absolutely crackers. Like that picture I just showed you, amazingly. Anyway, other thing with the white, people always ask me about white stuff because I obviously like white. If you're going to do a white theme system, you've got power supplies from Superflower. They are brilliant as well. I thoroughly recommend Superflower power supplies. I actually use one in my server. Should speak volumes. They've got a new gold rated one out, but they do platinum ones as well. They're not the cheapest power supplies on the market, but then again, you know, if you're going white, you're not going to want something that's super cheap anyway. And when we're talking about power supplies, please remember that that is the kind of heart of your system. So that's a place that I always spend a little bit more money rather than going for the cheapest possible option. You've obviously got options with memory and stuff as well, but cable mod, I've got a video on the channel. Cable mod have customizing tops for Dominator Platinum now, so you can get white for those. But the great bit about it is you get a red, a green, a blue, a clear and an orange insert as well. In the picture I showed you, it was red, and that's in my own rig. I love them that much. So you've got that. Graphics cards, there are limited choices. The MSI ones have the little white rings on the bottom, but if you want to go all white, you're looking at KFA, Hoff, that sort of thing. Loads of choices with CPU coolers though, but to be honest with you, if you go for face down, I'd concentrate on the fan. But you can get white ones from Alpenfon, do a white one. There's some from Fantex as well. They do some white ones if you can still find them. It depends whether you want to go AIO or not. The all-white AIOs, there are a few of them. They're kind of down the cheaper end of the market. You know, they'll work, they'll be all right, but you know, you're never going to be breaking any doors off. It really depends how far you want to push. So I've given you some ideas of bits and bobs and stuff that you can do there. I hope that helped. Oh, white power supply, you can go. There's a Seasonic Snow White one as well, but they're quite expensive. Massive wattages, you know, that'll be a lot of money. The other one, you know, the Superflower ones that I said about, they're probably going to be less than half the price of the big Seasonic because it's 1,050 watts. Something that we can do though, because it's white, if you're interested in white stuff, I'm going to start a thread about these on the OC3D website, and I'll put a link underneath. So if you can think of any possible other white parts that we should do, come and post on the OC3D website. One thing I will say though is if you're a new member and you don't get the you get an activation email come through, some of the email providers are just basically not delivering our emails for whatever reason. I will look into it eventually, but there's a contact us button on the bottom of the OC3D website that comes straight through to me. So if you don't get your activation email, just send me, use that link, tell me your username and your email address, and I'll go in and I manually set you up. So I won't reply, it will just magically start working one evening when I just go in and do it. So just keep an eye on them. But that's just a little insight. So if you do get problems or you have had problems, contact us link, I'll sort it for you. It'll all be good. And I do want to wrap up because you've probably noticed the epic Orca t-shirt that I'm wearing from Tiago Tunes. Now, I bought this, but I did see that Tiago was doing the t-shirts. And he's been doing little comic strips, taking the mickey out of all us reviewers. And when I say all us reviewers, they're pretty much all covered. Even Josh from Fractal has his own little kind of iconic, character-y type of thing. Anyway, if you're interested in any of these from any of the reviewers, because obviously you're all going to have your favourites, you might have just stumbled here, and to be honest with you, if you've just stumbled here, you've probably not made it to the end of the video anyway, because I do chat an awful lot. But anyway, you can buy t-shirts. I don't get any kickback from the TTL Orca ones, and I think that's the way it should be as well, because this is all Tiago's work. So if you would like to support Tiago, the artist, with his t-shirts, I'll put a link for that underneath for you as well. And like I said, you can buy those for any of the reviewers out there. So it could be Jay-Z, it could be Paul's Hardware, it could be Sitbit, Bitwit, yeah, him. Yeah, there's literally one for pretty much every one of the people that have got a reasonable amount of subscribers. So even if it's not me, go over and have a look. I mean, if you're desperate, you could even buy a Linus one, but yeah, stir in the pot, stir in the pot. Anyway, yes, Value for Money Awards, Gamer's Choice Award. Love the little whiteboards. What do you think? Camera battery running out, so time to go.